We're not here simply to see, see how many dollars we can make. He who dies with the most toys wins. We're not to be like the pharaohs, amassing treasures and then burying it all with ourselves. There's something more to this life.
This one philosopher said, there's a God-shaped hole in each of us, and it can only be filled with God. And what happens is, I think, we try to fill it with a lot of other things. We've had decades, maybe from the early 60s, when we took God out of everything. We didn't need him in our schools anymore. We weren't going to pray to him in public. God was reserved for Sunday mornings, if you wanted to even make the effort. And we were a stalwart people. We were a proud people. We didn't need to be on our knees. And that evolved into a culture of drugs. That was where we were going to find our God, and immorality. And then that went into a culture of the me generation. And then that kind of went into a culture of materialism and acquiring things. And through all of this, our hearts have become more and more empty. That God-shaped hole that we've tried to fill with all these other things has become more and more wounded.
It's really no accident that materialism is on the wane. That the leading thinkers, the movers, the intellectual movers and shakers of our culture are changing their minds in mass and coming around to the idea that we don't live in a big machine that's cold and has no connection with us, but we do live in a spiritual universe. It's happening because there are developments coming out of science itself. You have the anthropic principle, which indicates to us that we live in a universe that appears to have been designed by an invisible hand, a universe that has resulted in us being here against incredible odds. You have the Gaia hypothesis, which indicates that the very planet that we live on and all of its functioning systems that keep us alive are here against incredible odds. You have quantum physics, which shows us that our basic reality, the reality that our world is based on, down there at that little subatomic level, is a never-never land, a place where consciousness shapes reality and determines it, where reality is not, where matter is not supreme. Indeed, matter, in a very real sense, has no existence apart from consciousness, apart from the observer looking at it.
Quantum physics, alternate reality. Pretty difficult concepts for some of us to grasp. But there are stories, too, of angels taking human form, and others of humans who seem to somehow be promoted to angel status for a brief period. John Griffith, suffering from a case of angina, was instructed by his doctor to be tested by a cardiologist.
And he came out from the angiogram with a very somber expression on his face, and he said, I have some news for you that you're not going to like to hear. He said, you have 5 blockages in your arteries, and he said, and you have an aneurysm in the aorta. And he said, you're not to leave the hospital until we have surgery. The surgery didn't go as well as expected. I was supposed to be out in 3 to 5 days, and I saw 3 roommates that passed through my room before I was able to leave. And I continued to have problems, blood clots and a feeling of total disorientation, and things just weren't right. And the doctor said, we're going to have to keep testing and find out what's wrong. Over the next 18 months, I had 6 surgeries, and I didn't feel like I was ever going to leave that hospital. I felt that this was going to be the termination of my ministry, termination of my life. And the doctor came in and he said, we've done all we can do, that there's nothing more we can do but turn it over to your body and let your body work on it. I wasn't comfortable with that, and so I started praying. The room got very quiet, very still, and the head nurse came in. She had been in to see me every 15 to 20 minutes, and she stood alongside of me, and she said, I can remember her words so clearly. She said, just relax. She said, I know everything will be all right. And she put her hand on my right arm and began to stroke it. And she said, you will be okay. we're in control of what's happening to you. And I began to feel warm. A sense of wholeness came over me. And I didn't hear any other voices other than hers, who was saying and reassuring me that everything was going to be all right. And after a period of, I don't know how long, it was a very short time, she said, I'm going to go call the doctor. I want the doctor to come in and look at you. And so the doctor came in and he said, I don't know what's happened, but he said, you've made a sudden turn. And he said, I think you've passed the crisis. And I said, well, I knew that too. And he said, how did you know that? And I said, because the angel touched me. And he said, he laughed, and he said, what do you mean? And I said, no, the angel who was present in my room touched me. And that made all the difference. It was the nurse who had touched me. And after I began to feel stronger, I told her what had happened. And she said, you mean you thought I was an angel? And I said, no, I knew you were an angel. And that God was working through you to bring me back from wherever I was headed. And she was kind of overwhelmed by it all. And she said, I've never had this experience before. And I said, well, I can assure you I never have either. But I said, I believe very strongly that you are God's angel for me. And I will forever thank you for what you've done.